If you've ever seen the look in a Shih Tzu's eyes when you give it just a tiny bite, you'll understand why so many veterinary emergencies begin with well-intended love that lacks knowledge. And this is what I want to say plainly right at the start of this video. A Shih Tzu's stomach is not designed to live on human eating habits. It is small, sensitive, and reacts very quickly to mistakes much faster than you might expect. As someone who has worked in veterinary care and raised small dogs for many years, I see a common pattern among new owners. They don't mean to harm their dogs. They simply underestimate the consequences. One candy, one piece of cake, a bit of leftovers. To you, it feels insignificant, but to a body that weighs only a few kilograms, it can be a real biological shock. The damage doesn't always appear immediately. Some things destroy quietly, and by the time you notice, it's already too late. Chocolate is the classic example, not because it causes instant, dramatic poisoning, but because the theobromine in it cannot be efficiently eliminated by a dog's body. It accumulates, overstimulates the nervous system and heart, and leads to tremors, seizures, and cardiac rhythm disturbances. I've seen cases where owners said he only ate a little, a few days in a row, and that exact few days in a row was the problem. Garlic, onions, and what people often think of as healthy seasonings can destroy red blood cells in small dogs, leading to anemia. Raw bread dough expands in the stomach, causing bloating, severe pain, and potentially life-threatening situations. Raisins, macadamia nuts, xylitol, and sugar-free gum. This isn't a list meant to scare you for fun. It's a list of real reasons dogs end up in emergency rooms. There's a very human truth that few people talk about. Shih Tzus cannot protect themselves from dangerous foods. They can't tell the difference between tasty and safe. They only know how to trust you. And every time that sense of safety is broken by indulgence without understanding, their digestive and nervous systems are the ones that pay the price. Even foods that seem harmless, fatty foods, salty foods, cat food, raw rice, wild mushrooms in the yard, when repeated over time, can lead to pancreatitis, liver and kidney damage, or metabolic disorders. These illnesses are quiet, but when they finally erupt, they are very hard to save. Raising a Shih Tzu isn't about banning everything. It's about knowing what never needs to be tested, not out of fear, but out of respect for the biological limits of a small body. Dogs don't need to eat like you to be loved. In fact, loving them properly sometimes means not giving. If you're living with a Shih Tzu, remember this. Everything you put into its mouth today, its body has to process on your behalf. And that small body doesn't have as many chances to recover from mistakes as a human does. When you understand this, you're not just raising a healthier dog. You're building a relationship of trust, where your dog is truly safe by your side. There is one very common mistake I see again and again when people raise Shih Tzus. Owners focus only on what to feed, and forget about when not to feed. A food can be safe on one day, yet become a burden on a dog's body on another when the dog is tired, when the weather turns cold, when the environment has just changed, or after a small stress you didn't even notice. Shih Tzus are a breed that reacts very quickly to stress through the digestive system. I've seen cases where the dog didn't eat anything toxic at all. It was the same familiar food, just given at the wrong time, and suddenly there was vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and loss of appetite. When this happens repeatedly, the digestive system begins to learn to overreact. At that point, the problem is no longer the food itself, but the way the body stores and remembers stress. Another thing many people overlook. Shih Tzus are very good at begging. Their eyes, their breathing, the way they sit close to your leg, all of it triggers a sense of pity in humans. But biology doesn't negotiate. Every time you give in emotionally, that small digestive system pays the price. Not immediately, but gradually. And when it finally becomes truly weak, you realize that you never raised your dog wrong out of cruelty, but wrong because you were too indulgent. After raising Shih Tzus for a long time, you start to understand a paradox. Feeding less in the right way is safer than feeding more with good intentions. A simple, repetitive, stable diet often keeps a dog far healthier than a varied menu with poor control. A small body doesn't need variety to be happy, it needs predictability. Knowing what it will eat today. Knowing that nothing strange will happen in its stomach afterward. And this is the question I often ask owners when they say, "My dog is such a picky eater." Are you raising a dog? Or are you letting your emotions decide its meals? If you've ever had a situation where your Shih Tzu ate something it shouldn't have, or reacted strongly to food that seemed harmless, share your experience in the comments below. Many people raising dogs just like yours are reading, and your story might help them avoid an unnecessary mistake. If you find these perspectives helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Not for entertainment, but to raise your dog with a lighter mind, less regret, and a deeper understanding of its body over time. The next videos will go deeper into the early signs Shih Tzus often whisper to you before their bodies are forced to speak much louder. There is a very dangerous common point among the foods you just heard listed. They don't poison dogs in a loud, immediate way, but instead strike directly at the metabolic and nervous systems, exactly the systems that Shih Tzus and other small breeds tolerate the worst. Spices like nutmeg and cinnamon are often underestimated because they're seen as just seasoning. But for small dogs, nutmeg can cause neurological disturbances, leading to disorientation, trembling, and even hallucination-like symptoms. Cinnamon isn't toxic in the classic sense, but it can irritate the digestive lining and cause drops in blood sugar, which is especially dangerous for dogs already prone to hypoglycemia. Many cases where a dog suddenly becomes weak, shaky, or unsteady start with something very small: cakes, candies, or seasoned baked foods. Xylitol is one of the most dangerous substances dog owners tend to underestimate. For humans, it's a healthy sweetener. For dogs, it's a direct hit to the pancreas and liver. In a very short time, xylitol can cause a severe drop in blood sugar, rapid weakness, seizures, and in many cases, acute liver failure. What makes it terrifying is how fast the reaction happens, sometimes before you even realize your dog has eaten the wrong thing. Fatty foods, salty foods, and cat food belong to a group that causes harm quietly but persistently. A piece of chicken skin, a bit of fried food, or regularly stealing cat food won't make a dog collapse immediately. But repeated often enough, the pancreas becomes overloaded. Pancreatitis in small dogs is one of the most painful conditions, and also one of the illnesses that brings the most regret from owners, because it's often followed by the words, "If only I hadn't given it those foods." With fruits that contain pits, like cherries, the danger isn't in the sweet flesh, but in the pit. Cherry pits contain compounds that can release cyanide when crushed. For small dogs, even a very small amount can cause respiratory and neurological distress. The irony is that dogs often swallow pits out of curiosity, not hunger, and accidents happen in moments you believe are completely harmless. Raw potatoes and green tomatoes contain solanine, a substance that a dog's digestive system handles very poorly. Solanine affects the nervous system and intestines, causing vomiting, diarrhea, muscle tremors, and in severe cases, weakness or paralysis. What makes many owners careless is the thought, "It's fine when cooked," and they forget that a single raw piece dropped on the floor can be enough to cause trouble for a small dog. All of this leads to one very important truth when raising a Shih Tzu. Just because you can eat something doesn't mean your dog can tolerate it, and just because it doesn't harm you today doesn't mean it won't harm your dog tomorrow. If you've ever noticed your dog being unusually tired, slightly shaky, refusing food, or having diarrhea without a clear reason, try to think back. In the days before that, was there something given just a little bit? Many dangerous signals begin exactly that way. If this content helps you be more cautious about what you feed your dog, leave a comment and share your experience. And if you're raising a Shih Tzu or another small dog, subscribe to the channel so each video doesn't just help your dog live healthier, but also helps you raise them with less anxiety and fewer regrets. There is one more angle that very few people pay attention to, yet it often determines whether a dog can recover after eating the wrong thing: the speed of the owner's response. With small dogs like Shih Tzus, the body has very little margin for error. When you hesitate and observe too long with the thought, "Let's see if anything happens," the dog's nervous system and liver may already be damaged before you intervene. In real veterinary practice, bringing a dog in early almost always makes a huge difference in survival and recovery. Another very ordinary detail: small dogs most often eat the wrong things not when they're hungry, but when you're busy. While cooking, during meals, when guests are over, when your attention slips, a single piece falling on the floor, a candy in a pocket, or a plate placed lower than usual is enough. Feeding accidents in dogs rarely happen because of ignorance, but because of a few seconds of lost awareness in very familiar moments. In addition, many people don't realize that small dogs are quite good at hiding discomfort. They don't whine constantly or show dramatic signs like larger dogs. Instead, the signals are subtle. Slightly faster breathing, lying apart, not wanting to play, or watching you more than usual. By the time strong symptoms appear, the body has often been under stress for quite a while. That's why "he was fine just a moment ago" is something I hear very often. It also needs to be said plainly. Home treatment based on folk tips can make things worse. Forcing a dog to vomit, giving random liquids, or waiting for it to pass on its own can sometimes cause toxins to penetrate deeper, or lead to choking and esophageal injury. With small dogs, the safest approach is always to stop feeding immediately, keep them warm, and seek professional help early. Finally, after raising Shih Tzus for a long time, you begin to understand this. Careful feeding isn't about avoiding one big accident, but about preventing hundreds of small pressures from accumulating. A dog's liver, pancreas, and intestines don't fail in a single day. They wear down little by little, with each just a little extra. And once that wear has gone on long enough, recovery becomes very slow, no matter how much you love them. If you're raising a small dog, treat every meal as a caregiving decision, not an emotional impulse. It's this repeated, everyday awareness that keeps your dog healthy for the long run and by your side for as long as possible. And to close this video, I want to leave you with one very practical thought. Raising a Shih Tzu or any small dog doesn't mean memorizing a long list of forbidden foods and living in constant anxiety. What matters more is understanding that that small body does not have the same capacity to absorb mistakes as a human body. Every feeding choice, every moment of indulgence, every lapse in attention leaves a mark, whether you see it right away or not. Dogs don't know what is dangerous. They only know how to trust the person caring for them. And that trust isn't built on how tasty the food is, but on how safe you keep their body. When you do that long enough, the dog no longer needs to stay on guard, no longer needs to beg for food, no longer needs to worry about its own survival. If after this video you change just one small thing, be a little more cautious with food, pause for 1 second before letting your dog have a bite, or pay closer attention to the very subtle signals from their body, then this video has already done its job. Caring for a dog, in the end, isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing it right. And it's that correctness, repeated every day, that keeps your dog healthy, calm, and by your side for a much longer time.